Okay, how about we start with very kind of quick intros. So I'm joined today by Ryan, CIO and CISO of Wiz, and Tal, who is our very own CPO at Atera. I am gonna head it over to you. Tell us a bit about who you are, what Atera and Wiz are exactly for anyone that doesn't know, but I doubt it.
Ryan, go ahead.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for the chance to join you all virtually today. Again, my name is Ryan Kazanciyan. I am the CIO and CISO at Wiz. If you're not familiar with us, Wiz is a platform that we built to help teams securely develop, build, and run everything they produce in the cloud, be it on AWS, Azure, GCP. And our focus is really on democratizing security across all of the teams that have to partner to efficiently and effectively use the cloud across R&D, DevOps, and security. As CIO and CISO, my roles include leading our IT function, which includes IT engineering, ops, and business applications, as well as our security teams, which are responsible for security engineering, operations, risk, and compliance. I've been at Wiz for about 2.5 years now, and previously came from Facebook, now Meta, and before that, Tanium and Mandiant. Over to you, Tal.
Thanks. I'm Tal. I'm the Chief Product Officer in Atera. Atera is an AI-first remote IT all-in-one solution. We'll probably touch on this later on during the webinar. Many of you are already familiar with Atera. In my previous roles, I've been the VP of Product at Redis, and also served several senior roles in product departments at Converse and Flash Networks, a couple of others. Fun fact, I started my way as a data scientist around computer vision, so I have some very warm corner in my heart for AI and data science. So.
Thank you. Thank you both. And maybe quickly, I'm Anna, by the way. I missed that part. I'll be moderating today's session. I lead the content and communications team here at Atera, and I'm very excited to kick this off. Just a quick minute before we start, I want to go over a few housekeeping rules. This webinar is being recorded. Of course, the recordings of the session are going to be shared with everyone that registered for the webinar. You can drop your questions or comments, as mentioned, for Ryan and Tal in the Q&A section. Please help us stay organized so we can go by order. We're going to have 15 minutes at the end of this session to take all your questions. That's it. Let's dive right in. So, like I said, I'm super excited to have you both here. And as we're going to explore how AI serves as a powerful catalyst for enhanced efficiency and streamlined operations, how it enables team to focus on more strategic initiatives, I also want to maybe touch on the complexity and the challenges that organizations today must navigate carefully when introducing this new layer of AI. As we know, this can lead to integration issues, need for upskilling. It might change the team dynamics. So we really wanted to take today to kind of discuss how AI drives the significant productivity gain while also addressing some of these complexities. So I'll start. So as this technology continues to evolve, how would you each describe its transformative role in enhancing productivity across industries and specifically within IT departments today?
Cool. I'll start. So maybe a little bit of a forward. It's been a lot of big words around, productivity and complexity and a lot of things. And I think from my perspective, the main issue here is to learn a little bit about AI and what's the impact is going to be on your organizations. If there is an impact, I think it's a big if. And when looking at at what AI has done already, I would probably look at it from from the macro level. I would look at the impact on GDP, and I think that to date it has been nothing. You don't see a big impact on GDP on the macro level, so it's very, very hard to see a real impact. There's a lot of hype, a lot of big words around this, but there was no real impact on GDP. So I don't assume that there's a lot of impact on productivity around companies. I do, however, think that it will. It's going to have an impact. The real question is how and when. And there's a saying by Keynes, who was a famous economist, that said, it's easy to know what's going to happen finally. At the end, everyone dies. The real question is when, right? So I think it's a similar question here.
Yeah, I'd agree with Tal. I think, look, if you look at the demand curve, even just on the consumer side, let's set aside business. All of the major services like ChatGPT are basically still doubling their user base year over year. So the demand growth is there. There's a lot of experimentation, I'd say, especially when it comes to translating that from casual usage into something that is deeply integrated and part of how you as a business are being productive. And I think the disruptive effects are materializing more immediately in some industries and areas than others. So clearly in areas like creative content or areas where we're improving existing agent-based systems like support chatbots, where there's a higher tolerance for some error and hallucination, it is having, I'd say, a small impact there and growing quickly. And that's also the areas I think where a lot of people have questions about, well, what does that mean for jobs and economic growth? For expert systems and use cases, I think it's still on the experimentation stage, and where enterprises are excited but being cautious, because the reality is, while these features and the promise is appealing, they're coming at a cost. We'll talk about this, but adding vendors incurs complexity and debt. None of the products that are integrating or providing these features are doing so for free. And of course, because they're in part passing along the charges from some of the major AI platforms that they themselves are using, a lot of organizations have to start thinking about the cost benefit analysis, and can't just blanket adopt all of the AI features for all of the SaaS vendors they use right out of the gate. And so that type of cost benefit analysis and rooting it back in requirements is what you're going to see a lot of in the coming year. Again, no company is going to be able to just pay for every SaaS vendor they use that provides AI-enabled features to just turn it all on and use it across the board. And that's good. It's going to lead to more judicious usage. And we can certainly talk more about how that cost benefit analysis will play out.
Yeah, so we'll get to that a bit later. Maybe, maybe starting from, the beginning. And Tal touched on it a bit, saying that AI was everywhere. Obviously, it's not going anywhere. But looking at this kind of past year's wave of AI products and services, and from your personal experience, obviously, either working with AI vendors or introducing this technology into your own products, would you consider Gen AI to still be a hype or no?
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk from our experience first adopting it in our own product. So there's a few areas within the Wiz product we've experimented with and then ultimately shipped AI-enabled features. One is around search. So if you have a cloud environment and we're inventorying it and the risks in it, it's really nice to have it a simple way to ask what under the hood is a very complex graph query. So a question like, show me virtual machines in my environment containing sensitive data that is exposed to the internet. Translating a simple on the surface question like that in natural language to the underlying precise system understandable query, like machine understandable graph query, is actually a very good use case for LLMs, and one where you also can have some tolerance for imprecision. Another example is AI suggested remediation, where given a risk or a problem, and this is true in a lot of security domains, you can ask the system to generate a recommendation on what to do. And so in Wiz, we have issues that we identify as we process the environment to look for risks. and then a remediation engine that says, look, based on what we know about your environment and these findings, and based on the expert data that we've populated the system with, here are the steps you can take to fix it, and here's some example commands you could run or infrastructure as code that you could commit to do that. And when you control the experience and box it in like that, in a very tailored path for the user, you can get a lot of value. So I think that's where we're going from experimentation to finding value. I think the flip side of that is a lot of the hype around fully autonomous agents that can just autonomously solve any class of problem and reason at a very high order. We're still a few generations away from that, and I think that's where people who are not practitioners using these technologies day to day sometimes buy into some of the hype from all the investment going into the space and realize that in practice, a lot of these systems are still a bit goofy, still hallucinate a lot, still make mistakes that are just not acceptable in certain production usage. And that's where I think a lot of orgs will have reality checks and shape their investments while still keeping close tabs on how these products are evolving.
Yeah, I agree with Ryan. I'd like to touch on this maybe from a different angle, maybe. So when you look at different AI solutions out there, and you probably I see every day tens of commercials for different AI solutions for every vertical and every specific use case. I think you look at two different use cases. The first use case is what I call enhancement. So you have people working and you want to enhance their work. This is a use case that's hard to quantify, and many times the business model around this is a business model that's not one-to-one with the benefit. It's very, very hard to quantify it. By the way, in a survey that was done by McKinsey, I think the number one concern for CIOs was how to quantify the value of AI solutions. And there's another type of solutions, and that type is an actual save, usually of human labor. It doesn't have to be human labor. It could be other types of savings as well. For example, replacing a large system that costs a lot of money with a smaller system that costs less. But essentially, you see the ROI very, very quickly. So and many times this is also associated with the business model. So if you have a business model for AI that's not software as a service, but service as a software, meaning that you actually charge based on success, then this is something that allows you to adopt an AI system without bearing the cost of risk, which is usually what we look at when you look at all of those commercials. So I would say that if you look at those AI solutions, I think the first ones to succeed are the ones that show clear ROI. It's very, very hard. But again, if it's success-based, it's much easier to show ROI. So yeah, I would say this is where I would go first.
What's interesting about that, Tal, I think, is the companies and orgs that have the broadest data that could help with that ROI analysis are also the companies that are selling AI-enabled products and services, and therefore have somewhat of a vested interest in showing how amazing it's being. And not picking on any company in particular here, but I'll take an example of why it's so hard to get that ROI data. A week or two ago, headlines were made during Google's earnings call when Sundar announced that 25% of code at Google is now being generated by AI. And when I heard that percentage, for me, it was well, that doesn't tell me much, because one, 25% is measured by what? Lines of code for net new commits? What's the denominator? Two, if you've ever worked as a developer in a large code base, you know that a lot of code is auto-gen, either by template or by things that are various forms of enabled autocomplete type functions. And so just saying AI is now generating 25% of our code doesn't actually capture a delta in a way that on the surface it might seem to, of how much things have changed or how much they've improved. And so I think, as you said, it's going to be a while before the consumer side, like the big organizations trying to use this, actually have the data to back where it has and has not made a meaningful impact on efficiency and productivity. I think we're a ways from that.
Yeah, this is so true, and I think that if you look at success-based business model, which is starting to loom, this is kind of, you don't need to prove the ROI. So if you only pay if there was a success. So if you look at systems, for example, that solve tickets for users, there's Atera is going to launch this in a couple of months. But let's say that you have this kind of system. If you pay me only for auto-solved ticket, a ticket that was solved with no intervention from a technician, that means that you have nothing to lose. I don't need to prove the ROI. Just implement that and just pay for whatever it took, and what the value is for you. And if it costs less than the value, it's a no-brainer. I would say that. So I would say that systems and business models that start this way would probably be the first to succeed, because it eliminates the barrier to entry for CIOs that are worried about the ROI.
Agreed. It's a lower risk way to sort of dip your toes into it and see the effects. Yep.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, maybe that's a nice segue. You tell me. So will companies and teams that adopt AI earlier, would they see those gains coming in earlier? Are they going to be able to prove ROI before others, or would that still remain out there? And what are the gains of any early AI adopters?
Yeah, tough question.
Yeah.
So I think that past experience shows that it's not always that the first company to jump on the bandwagon are the one that will succeed in the end. We've seen it in multiple examples, and Ryan, you and I talked about it earlier. There's the example of the .com boom. You had lots of companies who remembers pets.com, or I don't know, like various companies that everyone thought that is going to be the next thing. And I don't know if anyone thought that a bookseller is going to be one of the biggest companies in the world today. So it's very, very hard to know who the winners are going to be. And also, since then, there's a lot of companies that came later on, such as Facebook or Meta, that started later after the .com boom, and they succeeded very well. So it's very, very hard to know. I would argue that if you look at operations, there's the kind of like a Darwinistic approach to it. So if you manage to lower your costs, the operational costs, then you have an edge over your competition in whatever field you are. And if you have that edge, this is an edge that accumulates over time. So if you start with AI, and you do get, which is arguably true, and you do get this performance boost, that means that you have this edge over your competition, and that means that you'll be able to drive better prices, and then you can capture the market better, be more efficient, and this ultimately will allow you to win your market. I would say that it's a risk, but I'm not sure that you can allow yourself not to take that risk. Just in case it doesn't work.
I think the answer has to come with the context of where you are as a business, right? Like if you're a early stage startup, 1 or 2 person operation where everyone has to wear many hats, and you're basically going from 0 to 1 in every function. I think early adoption of AI supported technologies is such a good force multiplier. And at a point where you're good with like draft stage, prototyping stage capabilities and functions in every regard, that like the first mover advantage is very real in that context, because it is going to help you get something meaningful to market quicker and like cover roles that you can't have the luxury of dedicated resources or people or tools for. So in that context, I think absolutely. I think for established organizations, it does tend to be more nuanced. And this goes back, I think, to just first principles around buying vendor-driven solutions in any context. Like organizations often struggle with defining technical requirements for buy versus build situations. And in an IT org working with business partners with different teams and use cases that are not technology experts, it's often very hard to resource that well. And so when you take AI technologies, it's the same thing where teams that are seeing their SaaS vendors offering AI-enabled product features or new startups that lead with that, like are appealed by the product message and the use cases. But I think an important role of IT leaders is to center them back on like, all right, well, let's think about your requirements, the problems you're trying to solve, the technology that you have today and where it's falling short or covering that, and think about the problem from requirements and not from features. And that always like steers you in a good direction and helps, I think, over time orgs have some governance that avoids like accumulating the tech debt and cost that comes from just piling up too many like SaaS point solutions too quickly, like AI or otherwise.
Yeah, I can't agree more. It's again looking at the need and finding the right solution for the need. Do experiment. Don't say it's too early, I'm not going in there. Do experiment, but you can experiment with lower budgets at the beginning to see that it does provide the value that answers your needs. But go full on only if you establish the fact that it answers the needs that you have.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm probably jumping ahead to the next topic here that Anna has queued up, but like, what does that mean practically speaking if you're in an IT organization? Like, I'll take from personal example. So, in the past year, I've had our legal teams ask about evaluating legal AI tools that help with like looking at contract data to process things quickly. Procurement teams looking at AI tools to do things like help with the procurement process and then like privacy and security and legal data that come with all the paperwork involved in procurement. Marketing asking about AI tools for content generation. And like in all of these types of scenarios, the questions you have to ask is, one, like if each of these teams is already using SaaS tools to fulfill these functions, are those tools going to be bundling AI features already? Like, is it there in their roadmap, or is this really a case where you need a separate tool? And two, are those needs so distinct and unique that they require a specialized tool? Or if you have entitlement to something like Google Gemini or ChatGPT, like is the generalized AI product set good enough to fulfill those without needing it integrated with your purpose-built tool? The third consideration that's now emerging, which is super interesting, is the device and OS makers are also starting to commoditize this. Like with the latest version of iOS, Apple has started this where things like text generation and summarization are built in, done locally, and available for free. You can go into the Notes app or email, highlight text, do summarize, like give it bullets, tell it generate. Like that's something you previously had to pay for or use a third-party service. What happens when more and more of those functions move into the devices or OSs and become available at no extra cost? I think it forces the commercial solutions and the SaaS solutions to either improve and specialize or they're going to die. And a lot of them will consolidate or die on the vine because they just won't be able to justify their existence. As an IT leader, you sort of have to skate where the puck is going and think, if this is the trend in 6 months or 12 months, is buying another product that just focuses on this use case plus AI really the right investment? Or should I wait it out a bit, make sure I have good requirements and see like where the existing products and platforms are going?
Yeah, definitely. And maybe chiming in on this. So what we see today is that there's so much AI capacity built in. I think it's no wonder that NVIDIA today is, I don't know if today it's the largest company or it was yesterday, but it's definitely out there. But the reason is that there's so much AI capacity built in. So the cloud centers are full of H100 and H200 and all those specialized GPUs that AI runs on, and you can act, as Ryan said, it's you can actually go to ChatGPT and have free AI, which is amazing considering the amount of investment that went into this. This should have been costing us a lot of money. I'd say that it's if I go back again, it's kind of similar to the broadband revolution. So there was like in the early 2000s, there was a lot of fiber optics cables laid in. A lot of big companies that laid all those fiber infrastructure, and they were thought to have a lot of money, to make a lot of money. At the end, many of them went bankrupt, but the infrastructure stayed. We have like a very, very big infrastructure of fiber today, and it's a lot due to that. And I think it's kind of a similar situation, and we can enjoy that as customers. We have all this good for free. I would also chime in on the use case, and I'll give an example from Atera. So let's say that you have a ticket and you need to answer to a ticket, and then you need a suggestion on what to answer. So at Atera, we have this button that allows you to create an auto reply, which is nice. But honestly, you can, as Ryan said, you can do the same. You can just copy the ticket, go to ChatGPT, provide the ticket, and ask him to draft a response. Maybe you have a better prompt, maybe a little less, but basically you can do more or less the same, and you have it for free. However, what ChatGPT cannot do is what we're doing with our agent. So one of the things that we do is we have when you have a ticket, we just go to our agent, which sits on the machine, and we conduct several health checks that are associated with the complaint that came in the ticket. And then we can also our AI engine can also create an action to remediate the issue that you have. And this is something that closing the loop, this whole loop with ChatGPT. This is something that's that's almost impossible in other means. So having this kind of a complete solution, that's definitely something that you need a point solution to do that, and not just use ChatGPT. So that's, I think it's a good example for this.
It's the context that you get with integrating the AI features as part of a broader set of data and access and integration that your platforms have. That's always the key. Yeah.
Exactly.
I'll summarize it as smart adoption versus early adoption, right? Based on use cases from where we started from, thinking about smart adoption, smart hiring, looking, at your kind of day-to-day as IT leaders within your organizations. Can you maybe speak a bit about, the changes you're seeing in terms of helping IT teams, your teams, to adopt AI? Do you feel like it brings up challenges in terms of recruiting new talent? Do you feel like AI is creating a whole new skill gap out in the market? What are your takes on that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. If you're in an engineering role, then it absolutely has created the need to develop like some AI native skills, like around prompt engineering. And like if we actually had Wiz posted a blog post about the under the hood for the natural language text to security graph query function we released, where we talk about the prompt engineering and like our mix of zero shot and few shot learning, how we use RAG, retrieval augmented generation, and the architecture of the solution, and why we took the approach we did. So there's definitely a lot behind that, and I'd say that it's become an interesting like new track for engineering development and growth. What's I think really nice about this all is AI-enabled products and technologies have sort of been developed out in the open and accessible to consumers from day one, even before they were contemplated as enterprise solutions. And so access is really broad. And it's a smart pattern for the platform developers too, because if you can hook and engage practitioners as individual consumers and get them using and playing with these technologies then you're also building this like ecosystem of like future developers and people who bring that interest and experience to their job. And of course that serves them well. So in that regard, I think that the openness and availability of these tools has been great for people to learn these skills. I think if you're a consumer of a product where there's an AI enabled feature, the skill set that I'd say is not like a dedicated specialization, but is more of just like a technology foundations type of thing, is just understanding where these systems tend to fall apart, like recognizing where a hallucination might happen, or recognizing the type of problem where like a product with an AI feature is probably not going to help you out, like knowing the rough edges. You know, I think about someone who like relies on text content generation and doesn't proofread it, or someone who uses auto-gen code and then doesn't check it properly for correctness. And again, people like in experienced roles will learn to do that through mistake and trial and error. But I think from a user perspective, that's where you'll probably see a lot of development over time.
I agree with Ryan. So, you know, the way I look at it is there are two types of roles that are associated with AI. So one is developing AI systems, and you know this is the place where you do need the expertise around you know RAG and prompt engineering and sometimes even creating your own LLMs through open source or in other means and training them. That's kind of skill that you'll need, and you know I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of there's a shortage in the market. I haven't checked it, but I would say that that's probably the case. And then on the other side, there are the AI users. And for the AI users, I would argue that the main barrier is being AI default. So what I mean is, I'll take you again to a story in the back. I have a lot of history lessons here. So when Google just came out, it was not natural for me to look up everything in Google. It took me a while to get there, to get to the recognition that by default I'm going to Google every time I have a question. And by the way, Google worked very hard so that this will be the case, but it came in the end. And I think that this is what happens right now with AI. It's in there, people are using it, but most of the people are not defaulting to AI solutions. And I think that once they do, it's something that will entail yet later on the learning that Ryan talked about. You know, learning when the results are okay, how to write the prompt, how to use the context window, how to use your own context. A lot of things that they're not complicated, but you need to use the system in order to get to know them. So I would say that this is the main hurdle for adopting AI right now. I'll give another example from my organization. So the product managers at Atera. So one of the things that we do is we write. It's called product backlog item. Is kind of a description of what we want the dev team to develop. And you know there's a lot of field in there that we need to address, such as security and data event and a lot of things that needs to be addressed in order to provide a good productized feature. And you know what, when ChatGPT came out a little bit afterwards, I told my guys, look, let's build a skeleton with AI. That's that should be pretty easy. And it was very, very hard to convince them to do that. And actually, only when we wrote the right prompt and showed the result, this is something that created adoption. And then people tended to experiment with us and change the prompt according to their needs and start working with this. So it does need a little bit of nudge from users to start using it and default to that solution. But I think we're going to get there.
Great, thank you both. I wanna go back maybe to something you mentioned earlier that kind of relates to this both hiring and maybe people's sentiment towards AI. Tal, you mentioned, some capabilities, even with Atera, include potentially not having any technician interfere, right, with a ticket solving process. So I'm wondering, are you still feeling people are nervous about AI replacing them, taking away their jobs? Maybe especially with, junior tech roles. Would love to hear from both of you.
I would say a couple of things on this. So people are nervous for sure. I don't think they have a reason to be, but they are nervous. If we look at the IT domain today, again, it's the same McKinsey research that I've seen earlier. It says that they research about a million jobs or something. I don't remember how many, but what they saw is that the number of skilled people is about 1/3 of the open positions in that field, in the IT field. That means that you have about 2/3 to fill in with the open positions, which is a lot. And I think most of you out there, you probably feel it. It's very, very hard to recruit people to those IT jobs. Wages are rising as well as a result, which is natural, and it's kind of difficult. So I would say that if we do manage to reduce the need for human intervention in tickets, for example, that's probably going to alleviate the severe the severe shortage that we have today with IT persons. I think that's one, and the second issue is again history lessons. I think history taught us that every time that we've introduced a new productivity gain, then people didn't lose their jobs. Actually, what happened is that people went and did other jobs that were that they didn't have time to go to earlier, and that increased the overall productivity. So for IT people, again, you probably feel that many times when you talk to IT professionals, they say that they drown in the day-to-day. They need to answer tickets. They need to solve problems. They're very, very reactive, and they don't want to be reactive. They want to be proactive, but they don't have the time for this. I would argue that with AI solutions, that's going to be the case. So more time invested in avoiding security issues and handling infrastructure and being very, very preemptive, rather than being reactive as they are today. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, really, really well put, Tal. I think it certainly varies by industry and role. Like I do think that we've seen already effects in certain markets around content creation, content moderation, other areas where the cost considerations of more entry-level positions versus the good enough output you can get from LLM-enabled products has actually started to have some effect. I think in technology and engineering, it certainly has been more insulated, and that is where I think, as Tal said, there's such a skill shortage across all tiers, both entry level through more experience, that even in cases where there are efficiency gains, there's so many other areas of need and opportunity that it's more of a shift of where resources are put rather than an outright replacement of people with systems.
Yeah. I would also add that it's true that there will be some kind of professions that I don't know, maybe they'll disappear, maybe they will kind of dwindle a little bit. However, those people would probably do other things. One of the the ways to look at it is, and I heard this from a friend of mine. He said that in the content world and image generation, we went from being creators to being curators. So you do need someone to curate. So you go to Midjourney and you create those images. You do need to select the right image, right? You do need to change the prompt a little bit. So it did not disappear. The results are better. They're faster. You can iterate faster, but you do need that person to do that.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm watching the chat. I just wanted to shout out Brent, who said he's been using Copilot. That's how you amplify your resources without hurting anyone. He's been using Copilot to create cleanup scripts and many others. So if anyone's here that's been giving Copilot a try, please let us know what you're doing with it. We'd love to hear from you. And with Copilot, I also saw a question coming in the Q&A. I'm reminding everybody, any questions you have, you can add them to our Q&A tab. One of the questions had to do with hallucinations. Ryan, you touched a bit on it, but maybe let's kind of move into this conversation about limitations and security risks, because obviously everybody cares and worries about that. So for security leaders managing tech within companies, how do you handle third-party vendor risks when you have team members coming with these different tools that they may use at home or bringing them to work? How do you go about that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll say this very candidly: third-party risk and vendor risk management is probably one of the hardest problems to solve for in enterprise security today. And unfortunately, a lot of the solutions and approaches over the last decade or two have led to a lot of paperwork and unnecessary friction that provides very little value. Some of this is rooted in well-intentioned compliance and legal work that just goes off the rails. But I'll give an example. A year or so ago, we introduced in our product documentation, which is in product docs, a search feature that was powered by AI. It was actually provided by the third party that we use for our docs solution. And the moment that was in the release notes as a feature to search documentation, we had compliance teams from enterprise customers sending 200 to 300 questions about AI safety and risk, with questions about what's the risk of physical harm and human harm and bias. And this was all triggered because for some organizations, they've built up the scaffolding to say AI usage creates risk. Technology has AI. Therefore, the way we address this is we ask the vendor 300 questions, and then it goes in some sort of plan of action and milestones in some giant system. And the same approach has, by the way, been used for a lot of security work. And it's hard because as a consumer, you can't introspect and monitor every single one of your vendors and their environments. And so I think the downside of that is it creates friction without benefit. Some friction in security is good, but when you're as a consumer of a new technology, the questions you should be asking yourself about AI risk need to be rooted in the same questions you should already be asking about data and access management. You're handing your data to another vendor. That vendor in turn might have their own sub-processors or vendors. Do you understand who it's being shared with? Do you understand the effective permissions they have to your data versus what they claim they will use? Do you understand the life cycle of the data? Do you understand the security controls that are in your side of the shared responsibility model? And if you're capturing those things, you can actually build criteria and ask the hard AI safety and questions where it's actually justified, and not take this sort of simplified, naive approach where you just bludgeon everyone to death with huge questionnaires. So everyone's working through this now. It's a real challenge, I will say, and I think organizations are also struggling with the fact that there are no standards for assessing AI-enabled products and solutions in the context of risks. There's no uniform third-party risk assessment standard I can hang my hat on and say we're good. This was reviewed and vouched for by this entity that's operating with a standard. Therefore, this should give you some level of assurance. That has to be developed. Until it is, a lot of orgs are going to be spending a lot of cycles trying to figure this out.
Wow, I couldn't agree more. I think the compliances around this, and by the way, to hear that from a CISO is a breath of fresh air. It's crazy, and I think one of the reasons is that compliance, like the regulator that created the compliances, instead of going to general rules that everyone needs to apply to adhere to by law, and say these are the rules. They went on to create compliances that require you to document everything and to research every vendor that you have and go through so many time wasting and energy wasting and money wasting areas. Maybe a little bit on how we handle this in Atera, where we went. So we went in two directions. One is we partnered with Microsoft, and we said, look, we know Microsoft is the enterprise queen, right? And they have a lot of people invested in compliance. So we'll partner with them, and we'll go by their rules, and we're going to keep it safe. And second is that we've actually we're not using Gen AI as something that's free to roam. It's kind of limited in what it can do. So it has several actions that it can do. One is health checks. You can run health checks, and those health checks were written by Atera, and they can be applied, so they're safe. They're completely safe. And then a set of actions that are a lot of actions are safe for the end users, and some actions that are safe for the technician. So the AI cannot go wild and start doing stuff on your computer. It's kind of limited to what it can do and to what we allow it to do, and we only allow it to do automatically safe procedures and allow the technicians to approve others that need a technician to approve. So a bit on how we took it.
What's also interesting is in the earliest days of like ChatGPT, I think there was a lot of hyperbolic media coverage about the risk of data leakage, of like the system somehow being trained on one question from one user and then like sending sensitive data from that to another user. And the reality is, if you actually look at like evidence-based sources, like, yes, academically, like leakage is a risk, but the bigger risk is actually a number of other things. So for instance, in multi-tenant systems, prompt history and how that's segregated. Like the risk of model leakage leading to sensitive data being disclosed in a response to another user is far lower than prompt leakage, because the prompts often contain a lot of the sensitive information. And if that's being logged in a multi-tenant system, like protecting that's interesting. Access is interesting if the system is an agent and has access to data and can like violate trust boundaries. Those are the areas that like people should be focusing on. A lot of times, like the model leakage threat, because of, again, the early days and early understandings of how these systems work, end up being where a lot of focus is preoccupied on, and it's not where people should start.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, I think we're seeing a comment from Eddie come in, speaking just on that, saying the big challenge is how AI and LLMs protect company data, and the reason they're not using ChatGPT at the company is protecting users from leakage. But Ryan, you just chimed in on that, and that's super interesting. And there's another question in our Q&A tab asking you, as with CISO and CIO, how do you explain to your employees and colleagues how to use Gen AI from that perspective exactly? And as you can tell, I'm moving towards the Q&A tab, as we have a few more minutes to kind of go over all of your questions, guys.
So I look at this as an extension of what you should already be working with your employees on, which is acceptable use for third-party services, like regardless if they're free or for pay. Because the reality is, it doesn't matter if a SaaS product that your employees decide to use for company business is AI enabled or not. if I have employees that are using company data with an unsanctioned SaaS platform or solution, that's a data security and privacy risk that I need to manage regardless. And so what we've done is tried to extend the conversation in two ways. One is to make sure users understand that part of acceptable use and part of what we monitor for as part of our governance is we provide a set of tools that are authorized and reviewed and managed, and that's what we provide for you to do your work. If you need something that's not being covered by those, have a process for that. The flip side of that as IT leaders, I think, is the responsibility to be proactive in finding those use cases and like spotting where existing products are not filling the need. Because if you don't do that, then people will work around you. People will use unmanaged devices where they can. They will use unsanctioned services where they can get away with it. And so, like, if you don't work with people and give them some good paved road defaults that you can manage, that's the failure mode. They will just try to bypass you at every turn. So I think that's the shared responsibility between IT leaders and employees.
I'm not going to answer this. I'm not a CISO, so I would say
I'm sure you have rules for using AI though within your team.
I just urge my people to use AI to the greatest extent that they can and rely on the CISO to limit them when it's not possible.
I'll jump back into a bit of the conversation about productivity because I'm seeing a great question from Lars asking how can companies ensure that the implementation of AI tech not only leads to short-term productivity gains, but also promotes long-term innovation without disrupting existing processes?
Maybe I'll have a shot here.
Go ahead.
So I think we touched it earlier, and I think, as I said, one of the things that you need to de-risk the implementation of AI, and one of the ways to de-risk AI is to have, Ryan mentioned it, look at your needs, see if there's something that can answer your need, and then maybe look at the business model and see if that business model is per success. So that you have nothing to lose. So if it succeeds, then you've achieved your needs, and if it does not achieve that, then you paid nothing. I think that would be a good balance. You start to see these kind of companies and these kind of solutions out in the market, and I think that guarantees that that if there is productivity gains to be had, you'll have it, and if there isn't, at least you didn't pay anything.
Yeah. Great. I wanna thank Brian for taking on the question about AI certificates from our Q&A tab. I love it when people help each other in our chat. Maybe you guys want to add to Hudson's question. Are there any certificates available in AI for someone already working in IT, or maybe any other courses that you would recommend?
I'm not actually familiar with any certification available. I'll just say that from the usage perspective, just try it. Just try to do it. It's not very complicated, and you gain a lot by having experience hands-on. But from compliance and other measures, maybe Ryan has a more detailed response to this.
Not for certifications. I mean, I'd agree that like with open models like Llama available, it's easier than ever to get started and experiment on your own time. And I think with security and IT alike, I've seen a lot of great engineers and practitioners just build up that experience, like as people have done with their home labs in the for decades now, to come up with some projects and problem ideas and experiment and learn by doing. I think that's always the best way.
And you can use AI to learn how to do it as well.
That's right. You can ask her some ideas.
Okay, great. If that's okay with everyone, we're gonna go to our final question. I wanna talk a bit about the future. What do you guys look forward, or what can you share with us that we can expect in the future in terms of where productivity and additional gains when it comes to integrating AI?
So I think, as I said earlier, I'm a big believer in a shift in productivity that will be provided by using generative AI. But as I said earlier, it's very hard to know when this is going to come. It might be that we're entering the trough of disillusionment. It actually makes sense that we are, but the inclination of the curve is yet to be seen. How fast is it going to be? How fast we're going to reach maturity? It's very, very hard to know. So it might be that we'll start seeing productivity gains in a couple of months from now. It could be years from now. It's very, very hard to know.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, there's some experts that feel like the current approaches are going to hit a wall, and that we won't be able to overcome some of the things needed for like the true vision of fully autonomous agents and reasoning to reach what we think it could. But that may also not prove to be the case. So I'll say in the meantime, what I'm looking forward to is more and more AI technology and features to sort of fade into the background of how things just work. Again, taking the analogy from mobile, I was reflecting on the fact that with the latest iOS update, you have things like summarization of your text messages and notifications as a built-in feature. And as a user, you don't really think like that's, I mean, they advertise it as an AI feature, but it just happens. And I think more and more of how these systems and technologies will get integrated will just fade into the background like that. And that's, I think, the best outcome for a technology. That's when you know if it's reached a point of maturity where it is not the selling point on its own. The selling point is the outcomes it enables and the user experience. And so I look forward to seeing more and more of that, because I think, again, centering on the value and the outcomes and the user experience is how you get great technology in security and IT in any domain.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This is bringing us up to a minute. I want to say thank you to everybody that joined. If we missed any questions, do not worry. We will go over them, and you'll be able to get answers to all the unanswered questions in our community, through all the other channels, our social media channels. Thank you, Tal. Thank you, Ryan. This was super insightful. And I hope everybody had a great time.
Thank you so much.
I had a great time. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you. Take care.